You're not stuck, you're waiting. Waiting for the perfect time, the perfect plan, the perfect version of yourself. But what if that moment never comes? Here's the truth. Success doesn't begin when everything is ready. It begins the moment you decide to start. Think about how many ideas you've delayed, how many dreams you've placed on hold. Not because you couldn't do them, but because you told yourself, not yet. But not yet slowly turns into not ever. The reality is, there will always be a reason to wait. More time, more money, more confidence. But those things don't appear before you start, they show up because you start. You don't gain confidence by thinking about it. You build it by doing. You don't eliminate fear by waiting. You reduce it by facing it. Every step forward, even a small one, shifts your mindset from hesitation to momentum. You don't need perfect conditions. You need a decision. Start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can. Because progress isn't about giant leaps, it's about showing up when it's uncomfortable, when it's uncertain, when it's not ideal. And that's where real growth lives. The idea that there is a perfect moment to begin something important is deeply appealing, but it often becomes one of the most subtle forms of self-delay. People tend to imagine a future point where everything aligns: more time, better resources, clearer direction, stronger confidence. That imagined moment feels safe and reassuring, yet it rarely arrives in the way it is expected. Life continues to move, circumstances keep changing, and new uncertainties replace old ones. What seemed like a reasonable pause slowly turns into a habit of postponement, where waiting feels productive even though no real progress is being made. At the core of this pattern is the belief that readiness must come before action. Many individuals think they need to feel completely prepared before they begin, but readiness is often not a prerequisite, it is a result. Skills develop through practice, clarity emerges through experience, and confidence grows through repetition. When someone waits to feel fully equipped, they unintentionally block the very process that would help them become equipped. The beginning is not supposed to feel perfect, it is supposed to feel uncertain, and that uncertainty is part of growth. Another layer to this idea is the fear of making mistakes. Waiting can feel like a way to avoid discomfort or failure. It creates an illusion of control, as if holding back will somehow protect someone from outcomes they cannot predict. However, avoiding mistakes also means avoiding learning. Early missteps are not signs of failure, they are sources of information. They reveal what works, what doesn't, and what can be improved. Without taking that first step, there is no feedback, and without feedback, improvement becomes difficult. Waiting in this sense doesn't reduce risk, it simply delays the opportunity to adapt and improve. There is also a tendency to compare oneself to others who seem more prepared or further ahead. This comparison reinforces the idea that now is not the right time, because someone else appears to have more experience, better tools, or a clearer path. What often goes unnoticed is that those individuals also started before they felt fully ready. Their progress is the result of action taken over time, not the outcome of waiting for perfect conditions. By focusing too much on comparison, people shift their attention away from their own starting point and delay their own journey. Time plays an important role in shaping this mindset. When someone keeps postponing action, time does not stand still. Opportunities evolve, priorities shift, and energy fluctuates. What could have been started earlier with small steps becomes more complicated simply because of delay. In contrast, starting sooner allows more room for gradual growth. Even imperfect action creates momentum, and momentum has a way of building confidence. Naturally, small efforts accumulate, leading to noticeable change over time. The belief in a perfect moment can also create unnecessary pressure. If someone thinks they must wait for ideal conditions, they may set unrealistic expectations for how things should begin. This can make the first step feel heavier than it needs to be. When the focus shifts from perfection to progress, the pressure eases. It becomes acceptable to start small, to learn along the way, and to adjust as needed. This shift in perspective allows action to feel more manageable and less intimidating. Ultimately, the idea of the perfect moment is less about reality and more about perception. It is shaped by comfort, fear, and the desire for certainty. Recognizing that no moment will ever feel completely perfect can be freeing. It allows individuals to move forward despite uncertainty, trusting that clarity and capability will develop through action. The idea that action creates clarity challenges a very common habit, overthinking before doing. Many people believe they need a fully formed plan, complete understanding, or perfect certainty before they take the first step. This often leads to long periods of analysis, hesitation, and mental preparation that feel productive but don't actually move anything forward. In reality, clarity is rarely something that appears at the beginning. It is something that develops gradually through experience, adjustment, and direct involvement. When a person starts taking action, even in a small way, they begin to gather real information. Thoughts and assumptions are replaced by actual results. Instead of guessing what might work, they start to see what does work. This shift from imagination to experience is where clarity begins to form. It becomes easier to identify strengths, notice patterns, and understand challenges because they are no longer abstract ideas, they are lived moments. Without action, everything remains uncertain and theoretical, making it harder to reach confident decisions. Another important aspect of action is that it exposes gaps in knowledge. While this might seem uncomfortable at first, it is actually a valuable part of growth. When someone realizes what they don't know, they can focus their energy on learning the right things instead of trying to prepare for everything at once. This targeted learning is far more effective than trying to feel completely ready beforehand. Action acts like a filter, showing what is relevant and what is not, which helps simplify the path forward. Clarity also improves through feedback. Every action produces some kind of response, whether it's success, difficulty, or something in between. These responses provide direction. They highlight what should be continued, what should be adjusted, and what might need to be reconsidered. Without taking action, there is no feedback loop, and without feedback, it becomes difficult to refine ideas or improve performance. Progress depends on this cycle of trying, observing, and adjusting. There is also a psychological shift that happens when someone moves from thinking to doing. Overthinking often amplifies doubt and uncertainty. The mind tends to imagine worst-case scenarios, create unnecessary complications, and focus on potential problems. When action is taken, attention shifts away from fear and toward the task itself. This creates a sense of engagement and momentum. Even small actions can reduce mental resistance, making it easier to take the next step. Over time, this builds a rhythm where action feels more natural than hesitation. Another reason action creates clarity is that it helps define direction. Many people feel stuck because they are trying to choose the perfect path before they begin. However, it is difficult to know which path is right without exploring it. By starting somewhere, even if it's not perfect, a person begins to understand what aligns with their interests, abilities, and goals. This understanding cannot be fully achieved through thinking alone. It requires interaction with real situations and experiences. Action also reveals that not everything needs to be figured out at once. Large goals can feel overwhelming when viewed as a whole, but when broken down into steps, they become more manageable. Taking the first step often simplifies the next one. Instead of trying to solve everything in advance, a person learns to focus on what is immediately in front of them. This reduces pressure and allows progress to happen more naturally. In many cases, people wait for clarity before they act, but the truth is that clarity often comes after they act. It is built piece by piece through effort, reflection, and persistence. By starting, even without complete certainty, individuals give themselves the opportunity to learn, adapt, and grow in ways that thinking alone cannot provide. Fear is often misunderstood as something that must be eliminated before progress can begin, but in reality, it is a natural response to stepping into the unknown. Whenever a person considers doing something new, challenging, or meaningful, fear tends to appear. It signals that there is uncertainty, that the outcome is not fully predictable, and that there is something at stake. This reaction is not a flaw, it is part of how the mind works to protect and prepare. The presence of fear does not mean a person is incapable, it often means they are about to grow. Many people interpret fear as a sign to stop or delay, believing that they should wait until they feel more confident or less anxious. However, fear rarely disappears through waiting. Instead, it often becomes stronger when avoided. The longer someone postpones action, the more their mind has time to imagine negative outcomes, exaggerate risks, and build hesitation. What begins as a small doubt can expand into a much larger barrier simply because it is left unchallenged. In this way, avoidance feeds fear, while action gradually reduces its intensity. One of the reasons fear feels so powerful is that it is tied to uncertainty. The mind tends to prefer what is familiar because it is predictable and comfortable. Stepping outside of that comfort zone introduces variables that are harder to control. This can create a sense of vulnerability, as if something could go wrong at any moment. However, staying within comfort zones also limits growth. It keeps experiences repetitive and prevents the development of new skills, perspectives, and opportunities. Growth requires encountering unfamiliar situations, and fear is often present in those moments. Taking action despite fear does not mean ignoring it completely. It means recognizing it and moving forward anyway, understanding that fear does not define capability. When a person begins to act in the presence of fear, something important happens. The unknown starts to become known. Situations that once felt intimidating become more familiar through exposure. As familiarity increases, the intensity of fear tends to decrease. This does not happen instantly, but it happens gradually with repeated effort. Each step forward provides evidence that challenges the mind's initial assumptions about risk and difficulty. Fear is also temporary in nature. It often feels strongest before taking action when everything exists only in the imagination. Once the action begins, focus shifts toward the task itself, and the emotional intensity often reduces. The mind becomes engaged in problem solving rather than worrying about possibilities. Even if challenges arise, they are usually more manageable than the imagined scenarios that created the fear in the first place. This shift from anticipation to experience is a key reason why fear loses its hold over time. Another important aspect is that fear can be a sign of importance. People tend to feel more fear around things that matter to them, whether it is a goal, an opportunity, or a personal aspiration. The presence of fear can indicate that the situation holds meaning and potential value. Instead of viewing fear as a barrier, it can be seen as a signal pointing toward areas where growth is possible. By moving toward these areas rather than away from them, individuals open themselves to development that would not occur in comfortable, predictable environments. Building resilience is closely connected to facing fear. Each time a person chooses to act despite feeling uncertain, they strengthen their ability to handle similar situations in the future. Confidence is not built by avoiding difficulty, it is built by experiencing it and realizing that it can be managed. Over time, this creates a shift in mindset where fear is no longer seen as something to escape, but something that can be navigated. The idea that consistency beats perfection challenges a very common belief that success depends on getting everything exactly right from the beginning. Many people hold themselves back because they feel their efforts need to meet a certain standard before they are worth pursuing. They wait until their skills improve, their plan is flawless, or their conditions feel ideal. This focus on perfection can create pressure that makes starting or continuing feel overwhelming. In contrast, consistency shifts the focus away from doing things perfectly and toward doing them regularly, which is where real progress takes shape. Perfection often creates hesitation because it raises the stakes of every action. When someone believes each step must be executed without mistakes, they may become overly cautious or avoid taking action altogether. This slows down progress and reduces opportunities to learn. Consistency, on the other hand, lowers the pressure of each individual step. It allows room for imperfection, recognizing that not every attempt needs to be flawless to be valuable. By showing up regularly, a person builds momentum, and that momentum becomes more important than any single outcome. One of the most important benefits of consistency is how it compounds over time. Small, repeated efforts may not seem significant in the moment, but they accumulate in ways that are often underestimated. A single action might produce a modest result, but when that action is repeated consistently, the results begin to multiply. This gradual accumulation leads to noticeable improvement, whether it is in skill development, productivity, or confidence. Perfection, by contrast, often focuses too much on isolated moments instead of long-term patterns. Consistency also plays a key role in habit formation. When a person engages in an activity regularly, it becomes part of their routine. Over time, this reduces the amount of mental effort required to begin. What once felt difficult or unfamiliar starts to feel natural. This shift is important because it removes reliance on motivation alone. Motivation can fluctuate depending on mood, energy, or circumstances, but habits provide stability. By prioritizing consistency, a person creates a structure that supports ongoing progress even when motivation is low. Another important aspect is that consistency creates more opportunities for improvement. Each repeated action offers a chance to adjust, refine, and learn. Mistakes are not setbacks in this process, they are part of it. When someone takes consistent action, they encounter different situations, challenges, and outcomes. These experiences provide valuable insights that help them improve over time. Perfectionism often limits this exposure because it discourages taking action unless conditions feel ideal. As a result, fewer learning opportunities are created. Consistency also helps build confidence in a more sustainable way. Confidence is not just a result of success, it is also built through repetition and familiarity. When a person shows up regularly and follows through on their efforts, they begin to trust their ability to continue. This sense of reliability strengthens self-belief. Perfection, on the other hand, can make confidence fragile because it ties self-worth to specific outcomes. If those outcomes are not achieved, confidence may decrease. Consistency separates effort from outcome, allowing confidence to grow through commitment rather than results alone. There is also a practical advantage to consistency in terms of managing time and energy. Trying to achieve perfect results in a single effort can be exhausting and unsustainable. It often leads to burnout or long periods of inactivity between bursts of effort. Consistency encourages a more balanced approach, where effort is distributed over time. This makes progress more manageable and reduces the risk of losing momentum. By focusing on consistency, a person shifts their mindset from achieving immediate excellence to building long-term growth. Each step, no matter how small or imperfect, contributes to a larger pattern of progress. Over time, this pattern becomes more impactful than any single perfect attempt could be. If this message is hitting you right now, pause for a second to ask yourself, what is one thing I've been delaying? Drop it in your mind, commit to it, and take one small action today. No pressure, just progress. The idea that your mindset shapes your reality is rooted in how thoughts influence perception, behavior, and decisions. Mindset is not just about thinking positively or negatively. It is the internal framework through which a person interprets situations, responds to challenges, and defines possibilities. Two individuals can face the same circumstances, yet experience them very differently, largely because of how they think about what is happening. This difference in interpretation affects what actions they take, and those actions ultimately influence the results they experience. At a fundamental level, mindset acts like a filter. It determines what a person focuses on and what they overlook. When someone believes that growth is possible, they tend to notice opportunities, solutions, and ways to improve. When someone believes that their abilities are limited or that circumstances are fixed, they may feel like they are stuck in a rut and can't escape the situation. They are more likely to focus on obstacles, risks, and reasons why something may not work. This selective attention shapes how reality is experienced. It is not that external conditions change immediately, but the way they are approached changes, and that shift can lead to different outcomes over time. Beliefs play a central role in this process. What a person believes about themselves influences what they attempt and how they persist. If someone believes they are capable of learning and improving, they are more likely to take on challenges, even when those challenges feel difficult. They see effort as meaningful and setbacks as part of the process. On the other hand, if someone believes their abilities are fixed, they may avoid situations where they could struggle because those situations feel like a threat to their self-image. This avoidance limits experience and reduces opportunities for growth, reinforcing the original belief. Mindset also affects emotional responses. When faced with difficulties, a growth-oriented perspective tends to interpret challenges as temporary and manageable. This can lead to feelings of determination, curiosity, or resilience. A more fixed or negative mindset may interpret the same difficulties as overwhelming or permanent, leading to frustration, doubt, or withdrawal. These emotional responses influence whether a person continues moving forward or decides to stop. Over time, these patterns of response shape the direction of progress. Another important aspect is how mindset influences behavior. Thoughts alone do not create change, but they guide actions. A person who believes that effort matters is more likely to take consistent steps, even when progress is slow. They are more willing to adjust their approach, learn new strategies, and remain engaged. In contrast, someone who doubts the value of effort may give up more quickly or avoid trying altogether. These behavioral differences accumulate over time, leading to different levels of development and achievement. Mindset also plays a role in how feedback is interpreted. Feedback can be seen as useful information or as criticism, depending on perspective. A constructive mindset views feedback as an opportunity to learn and improve. This encourages openness and adaptability. A defensive mindset may see feedback as a negative judgment, leading to resistance or discouragement. This reaction can limit growth because it reduces the willingness to make changes or consider new approaches. There is also a connection between mindset and persistence. Long-term progress often requires sustained effort, and setbacks are a natural part of that process. A mindset that values learning and adaptability is more likely to support persistence because it frames setbacks as temporary and informative. This makes it easier to continue despite difficulties. A mindset that focuses on immediate success or failure may struggle with persistence, as challenges can feel like confirmation of limitations. Over time, the combination of thoughts, emotions, and actions influenced by mindset creates patterns. These patterns shape experiences and outcomes, reinforcing the beliefs that produce them. By becoming aware of these patterns, individuals can begin to shift how they think, which gradually influences how they act and respond to the world around them. The idea that progress matters more than timing challenges the belief that success depends on starting at the right moment. Many people delay action because they feel they are too early, too late, or not in the ideal phase of their life. They may think others have already moved ahead or that they themselves have missed an opportunity. This focus on timing can create unnecessary pressure and comparison, leading to hesitation instead of movement. In reality, progress is not determined by when you start, but by what you do after. When someone places too much importance on timing, they often overlook the value of steady effort. Time will pass regardless of whether action is taken or not. The difference lies in how that time is used. A person who begins, even in an imperfect moment, starts building experience, learning lessons, and developing skills. Another person who waits for better timing may remain in the same place, with ideas that never turn into action. Over time, the gap between thinking and doing becomes more significant than any difference in starting points. There is also a misconception that starting later puts someone at a disadvantage that cannot be overcome. While it is true that earlier starts provide more time to grow, they do not guarantee better outcomes. What matters more is the quality and consistency of effort applied over time. A focused, persistent approach can lead to meaningful progress regardless of when it begins. In many cases, starting later can even bring advantages such as greater awareness, clearer goals, or a stronger sense of purpose. These factors can make the effort more intentional and effective. Progress is built through action, not through waiting for conditions to align perfectly. Every step forward, no matter how small, contributes to development. These steps create momentum, and momentum makes it easier to continue. Once movement begins, it becomes less about finding the right time and more about maintaining direction. This shift in focus reduces hesitation and encourages a more active approach to growth. Another important aspect is that progress provides feedback, which helps refine the path forward. Without taking action, there is no way to know what adjustments are needed. Timing does not provide this insight, only experience does. By moving forward, a person gains information about what works, what needs improvement, and what direction feels right. This ongoing process of adjustment is what leads to meaningful advancement. Focusing on timing can also lead to unnecessary comparison with others. People often look at where others are and assume that their own journey should match a similar timeline. This comparison can create doubt or discouragement, especially if someone feels behind. However, each person's path is shaped by different experiences, choices, and circumstances. Progress is personal, and it does not follow a universal schedule. Measuring success based on someone else's timeline can distract from one's own growth. There is also a psychological benefit to focusing on progress instead of timing. When attention is placed on taking steps forward, it creates a sense of control and direction. Even small actions can provide a feeling of movement, which helps build motivation and confidence. In contrast, waiting for the right time often leads to passivity, where a person feels dependent on external factors rather than their own efforts. Shifting the focus to progress encourages a more proactive mindset. Over time, consistent progress creates visible change. Skills improve, understanding deepens, and confidence grows. These changes are not tied to a specific starting moment, but to the accumulation of effort. By valuing progress over timing, individuals free themselves from the pressure of perfect conditions and focus instead on what they can do in the present. Don't close this video and go back to the same routine. Take a moment right now, think about that one thing you've been putting off. Not tomorrow, not later. Right now. Start small if you have to. Start imperfectly if you need to, but just start. And if this message gave you that push, make sure you stay connected for more content that keeps you moving forward. Your journey doesn't need perfect timing, it just needs your first step